Beautiful Tuesday morning in the city of Lagos. Good morning and welcome to Today in the News here on Vanguard Life. My name is Ololade Adewumi. I look into our newspapers for today, starting with Vanguard as usual. Major headline on Vanguard says Gazette Furore. We didn't alter tax laws, says federal government adds it's NASA fair. What we didn't pass can't become law, says lawmakers. Senators' reps sit today over controversial alterations. Others, ADP rights group demand thorough probe. Which story can be found on page 5. Top banner it says U-Tide, Southeast bound commuters battle extortion, bad roads. Trump recalls U.S. envoys to Nigeria, 29 other countries. ADC, Tinubu's 2026 budget buries next generation in debt. Capital importation declines 62% to $1.13 billion. Lower banner, diplomatic spat with US on religious violence resolved, says federal government. Insecurity, Oyo, Ogun, Lagos launch joint task force to fish out terrorists. Dust over conferment of Yoruba chieftaincy titles. And lastly, ahead AFCON opener, Super Eagles static on FIFA CAF rankings. Away from the Vanguard, look into the Punch newspapers for today. Major headline says Autonomy battle. Local government demands direct funds as state receives 7.43 trillion naira. Local government allocations surged by 42% in 2025, 18 months after federal government fails to implement Supreme Court judgment. Top banner says killings. US conducts surveillance fight over Nigeria, says report. Contract revision cost the federal government extra 929 billion naira. U-Tide, police tighten security. Federal government declares holidays. Oil earnings fall short by 16.2 trillion naira. Kwam loses bid to block Awujale's election process. And lastly, on the Punch newspaper, it says US launches $3,000 leave voluntarily immigration plan. Away from that, I look into the Punch newspaper, major headline on the Nation. Newspaper, major headline on the Nation newspaper says federal government no going back on tax law first. Gains of Tinubu's administration by Information Minister Idris. Top banner it says US to partially suspend visa issuance to Nigerians, 18 other nationals from January 1st. Lower banner says federal job seekers to undergo drug tests. And lastly, court holds Kwam motion on Awujale. Away from that, I look into the Guardian newspaper. Major line on the Guardian says real estate investors wary as demolitions flatten over 2,500 houses. Top banner federal government introduces new emergency passports. Federal government defends new counter-terrorism doctrine, pledges strict rules of engagement. US conducts surveillance fight over Nigeria after Trump threat. Troops kill 17 Boko Haram ISWAP terrorists in Borno. Bago receives 130 rescued school children in Niger. Federal government mandates dope test for federal public service applicants. And lastly, Lagos unveils 800 million naira LSSTF headquarters hails Adebutu's donation. That's all we have on the front page of the newspapers this morning. Join us after the break for a quick analysis of some of our top stories. Welcome back if you're just joining us. This is Today in the News on Vanguard Life. My name is Ololade Adewumi. Joining us in the studio today is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. He's the publisher Ikeja GRA today, Lekki today, and Ilukweju today. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Olade. Good morning to all our viewers.
It's a pleasure having you in our studios today. I look into a
It's always a
major
pleasure to be.
I look into a major story for today. The federal government has denied claims that it altered recently passed tax laws after they were approved by both chambers of Nigeria's National Assembly and subsequently signed by President Bola Tinubu. The controversy began when Abdul Samad Dasuki, a member of the House of Representatives, alleged that the version of the tax laws publicly gazetted and made available to Nigerians differed from the text debated and passed by lawmakers. This sparked public outrage and led the House to set up a 7-man committee to investigate. In response, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Idris Muhammad, denied executive interference and said any discrepancies were a matter for the legislature to examine. He stated that as far as the federal government was concerned, there's only one version of the tax document and stressed that the investigation should be allowed to run its course. What are your thoughts on this allegation and that the version of tax that is shown publicly and what the House of Representatives actually signed is different?
Well, the whole thing looks a bit messy, really. Now, when the process by which a bill becomes law, both houses pass their separate versions, then they harmonize the two. Is that harmonized bill, which is an amalgamation of what the House passed? Because remember, the House can pass something, the Senate pass something slightly different with adjustments. So they bring the two together and harmonize them, right? Which means is that they make both the House's version and the Senate's version the same. Then it is that harmonized one that they pass to the president to sign. So for the House of Reps to now come up and say what was signed, the signed one by the president is what is put in the Gazette. It's when it's gazetted that it becomes law. So what the House of Representatives guy is saying is that what was put in the Gazette is different from what the National Assembly passed. Well, the federal government has denied it. The executive has denied it. He says no. The executive is trying to claim that perhaps what the House of Reps man, what's his name,
Abdul Samad.
Dasuki,
Yeah.
perhaps what he's looking at is the version that the House passed, which of course is different from what was gazetted, because after the House passed its own, it went to the Senate and it was harmonized. So the executive say maybe he's looking at the House version or the harmonized version, but that they did not alter anything. But the way I look at it is that it's very simple. It's not there. It's not a big deal to find out what will it take to put the Gazette here, the harmonized here, and compare the two. So that's why the House has raised that committee now. So what we need to make sure is that that committee is looking at the proper versions, the correct version. By correct, I mean harmonized. That committee is not looking at exclusively the version passed by the House, because what eventually got signed is different from what the House passed. So they need to make sure that they are in possession of the harmonized bill, and that is what they are comparing to what was gazetted. Now, if that harmonized bill is different from what was gazetted, it cannot be allowed to pass because that's unconstitutional. They have created a whole new law that is independent of what the National Assembly debated, agreed, and adopted. It can't be allowed to stand. I listened to the chairman of the tax committee yesterday, Mr. Tawo, when he was speaking on the television program, and he said, "Oh, well, if there are some discrepancies, it's not a big deal. We can just ignore those clauses and move on with the rest of the bill." No, it doesn't work that way. Can't work that way. He said, "Oh, it's not a grounds to postpone implementation and go and start from scratch or go and rewrite it to make it uniform. That we can just, the disputed clauses, we can just put them aside for now, move on with the rest of the bill." No. If there is a discrepancy, then that law is unconstitutional. You can't cherry pick parts of it that you say you can work with and then put aside the parts that are in contention. No, a bill is holistic. It is a single entity. So you can't separate parts of it and say, okay, we'll work with these parts, we leave these parts apart. No. So I would say let us wait for the House of Representatives Committee to do its work. It's not a big deal. It shouldn't take long. How many pages is it? You put one by one side, you put one by the other side, and then you start going page by page, line by line, and confirming that everything is word for word. The way the situation works, what that harmonized bill must be word for word what was passed by the president, which is what is published in the Gazette. It must be word for word. If there's any single change in it, then it renders the whole document null and void. Because what it means now is that something different from the will of the people. Because remember, National Assembly is the representative of the people. They are the ones that make laws on behalf of the people. So if there is something different from what National Assembly said to what the president has passed, then it's alien to the will of the people and cannot stand. So let the House of Representatives do its job. We still have a good week before it comes into implementation. We still have, I believe, 10 days before the new year that is supposed to come into effect, I think January 1st or thereabouts or 2nd. So there's still enough time. It's not rocket science to do a comparison and confirm the two. Matter of fact, I think there are some AI programs that you can use nowadays, ChatGPT or any of these, that you can run the two versions through, and it will tell you in 5 minutes whether it's the same thing or whether there are differences. And if there are differences, it will point them out to you. Mr. Oyedele said yesterday that the versions that are flowing around, that they are not the real version of what the National Assembly passed. So that he spoke to a member of the committee, and the member of the committee said they've not even yet received the harmonized bill to even begin the comparison. So that there's a lot of fake news out there, that all the things we are seeing online that are showing the discrepancies, that they are not real, that we should be patient, allow the House committee to do its investigation, and we move forward when they give us their results. However, I believe if the House committee concludes that there has been alterations and that the gazetted bill is different from what the harmonized bill is, then they cannot move forward. They have to go back to the drawing board, go and get the two versions harmonized. The National Assembly bill with what the executive is signing and has gazetted. They must align perfectly.
Besides it being null and void, if it is actually proving that it was altered along the passage, do you think there are other implications to this?
Yes, they are, because it means that there's impunity in the administrative process. That the executive can go ahead and alter what the National Assembly has done and seek to make amendments that are more to his own liking, that have not been approved by the National Assembly. Well, there are implications, because it means that if they can do it and get away with it, which makes me happy to some extent, that the House of Representatives is on its toes. Remember, it's been accused of being a rubber stamp and that it does anything the executive wants it to do. So for it to call out the executive in such a matter like this, it goes to show that they still take their oversight function seriously, and that they won't allow just any abuse or any executive imperialism to just take roots like that, especially when it runs counter to what the National Assembly intends. And its intention was that harmonized bill. So anything separate from that is executive recklessness. In fact, it's dishonesty, really, and it should not be allowed to stand. So we should take a strong stand against it, to the point of even completely stopping implementation of the bill. If it turns out to be true that the executive did alter it, and executive needs to apologize, needs to make amends, needs to backtrack and take back what it has gazetted, get the correct version done, and I've vowed never to do any sort of thing again, because, like I said, it's not only just unconstitutional, but it's an egregious abuse of power, and it should not be allowed to stand. I think it's a worrisome trend for democracy if such a thing can happen and the executive gets away with it, because at the end of the day, it renders the National Assembly impotent. It means anything they pass, can, subject to the whims and caprices of the executive, can be altered and can become law. So it means that essentially the executive is operating independently as a law unto itself. It can make and it can do and undo in terms of laws. If it can alter what the National Assembly has done and get away with it, then our democracy is under threat, because it now means that at the end of the day, the executive is both the legislature, both the executive, and it's running roughshod over all our rights, and he can do whatever he wants. So that's a worrisome trend if it is true. I keep prefacing my comments with if it is true, because remember, the executive has denied this, and the House is still investigating. So we don't know yet if it is true. But if it is true, no, it's really very bad and it must not be allowed to stand.
So how do you assess, the federal government position that he had, he had no role in altering the tax laws? Do you think this particular explanation holds water?
Well, if it got altered at all, it didn't get done by anybody else except the executive. So that excuse is baseless. Everything depends on when the truth comes out, when the investigation is concluded, as to what the truth is. But if it did get altered, it could not be altered by anybody else, because remember, by the time it left the National Assembly, it went straight to the executive. The executive signed it and gazetted it. So for them to be saying they didn't alter it, then who did? There are no goblins or phantoms that come out of the woodwork that come and take things in the middle of the night and go and change them. So if it was changed, it was a deliberate intention to manipulate that document in favor of the executive to the detriment of the people. I mean, I've seen some of the things that they said they changed, and they are, like, for example, one of the things that they said they changed was the fact that if you have a tax issue, what the National Assembly recommended was it gave the tax authorities permission or authority to investigate you. What the gazetted law is said to say is that if you have tax issue, they can arrest you, lock you up, and prosecute you, which essentially makes the tax authority, the judge, the jury, the prosecutor, vest all that power in the tax authority, which makes the tax authority become so powerful that it can subject ordinary citizens to the coercive apparatus of the executive, and just pick up people willy-nilly and lock you up simply because you didn't pay taxes, or you didn't pay enough, or you paid less, or you were late in filing. So everybody will now start going to jail because of tax matters. So, of course, the National Assembly saw the danger in that it starts to border on authoritarianism if a simple tax authority has the power to prosecute and to invest, to arrest and lock you up, prosecute you. So what the National Assembly said was that the tax authority should investigate. Then they report their findings, and if their investigations conclude that you have been dodgy or you have been clever by half with your taxes, then I guess their remedy is they now file a judicial proceeding against you. Not just that they can arrest you anyhow. So can you see the difference? If the gazetted bill is saying they can arrest people just for tax issues, and the National Assembly does not believe that that is proper, that has too much power for an agency of the executive to have. Look at how it exposes ordinary Nigerians to persecution, really. So this is the concern, is that some of the amendments are draconian to a fault that they work against ordinary Nigerians and give so much power to the agency and to the administration. So clearly, if it is true, if it turns out to be true that those amendments were made, the executive was trying to give its agency much more powers than the National Assembly was willing to give to that agency, and therefore it must not be allowed to stand because it works to the detriment of every Nigerian citizen.
Okay, so let's look at the committee that was set up. Do you think the committee is adequate enough, or there should be broader involvement, or maybe the judiciary or people involved in this whole, setup?
He who alleges must prove. So the allegation has come from the House of Reps. So they are the first line of investigation. At this point, you can't bring the judiciary in or anybody else. House of Representatives has made an allegation. Executive has denied it. So House of Representatives must now substantiate this allegation with evidence. So the committee is adequate. The committee is drawn from within the National Assembly. It is adequate for this first step. And when they now report their findings, and we now move to the second step, we can now talk about expanding the committee or reconstituting, involving members of the Senate, members of the judiciary, whatever the case, members of the administration to come and sit down and iron out how this happened, how to correct it, and how to ensure it doesn't happen going forward. But at this point, I believe the committee is adequate, and I believe it can do the job in a very short period of time, get it sorted, and let us know the truth. The reason we have to always hesitate a bit and err on the side of caution is because there's so much fake news out there. This whole issue of social media and internet, it makes it difficult to know what is true these days. Listening to Mr. Oyedele yesterday, it sounded credible when he said that what we are seeing floating around online is not what is correct. It's not. I'm not sure whether he was talking about. It's not the actual gazetted one, or it's not the harmonized one by the National Assembly. But he says one of the two that's floating around online is not the correct one. That it was made up by somebody. So it makes it very difficult to know what to believe nowadays. And so we have to always be very cautious. We shouldn't speculate. We shouldn't jump to conclusions. We shouldn't just take anything and believe and run with it until we have de facto, substantive, verified, confirmed authentication of whatever is being put forward. As of now, we don't know that until the committee submits its report of its own findings. Because the committee, being in the National Assembly, they have access to the harmonized documents and they have access to the gazetted documents. So they will get both authentic ones. So whatever their report is saying will be based on a comparison of the two authentic ones, not any fake thing that we may be reading online. So let's hold our horses and be patient and wait a few days. If they are dragging their feet on it and it doesn't come out before January, then we know they are jokers. We know that it's all eye service and it's a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. That they just wanted to make a whole lot of noise and not really make any substantive allegations and proof, because it shouldn't take them that many days. So they should submit their report before the date of implementation. Then we know that they are serious in their allegation and their oversight function.
Okay, so in the case where they don't submit their report before that time, some people have called, for the suspension of these laws until proper investigation have been done. But the federal government, on the other hand, has said that it has to, be implemented January 1st. What do you think? Do you think this implementation should be paused until all of this has been settled, or the other way around?
Well, if the executive is standing on the fact that no change was made, of course the executive will want to push forward with it to be implemented on the due date. What I would say is that a court needs to step in. Somebody needs, look, no law is a law until it's been tested in the courts anyway. So who knows what challenges this law is still going to face in the court in the future. It has not even been implemented yet and is already facing some challenges. So what I would say is that if the committee report comes out before the date, or if it doesn't come out before the date, somebody should take the bull by the horn, somebody who has jurisdiction. And to me, that should be any taxpayer in Nigeria. Should take the bull by the horn and go to court and file an ex parte motion seeking an injunction to stop the implementation on January 1 on the following grounds. But for him to succeed in that lawsuit, he would have to be able to produce both copies both original copies, both authentic copies, the harmonized version of the National Assembly and the gazetted version. He will put the two side by side. He would have done his analysis and showed the discrepancies. Then he will go to the court and say, Your Honor, they want to start this thing on January 1. House of Assembly says it's investigating. Today is December 30. They've not come out with a report. So we risk 2 days from now implementing an unconstitutional law, a law that there is discrepancy. Yes, so that's the ultimate solution, is that somebody has to take the bull by the horn and file a court case to stop the implementation on January 1 if the committee has not come out with this report by then.
Okay, so our time is fast, but let's quickly look at a second story very quickly. During the 15th National Executive Committee meeting of the All Progressive Congress at the State Health Conference Center, Abuja, President Tinubu urged state governors to comply with the Supreme Court ruling granting financial autonomy to local governments. The president warned that failure by governors to honor the verdict may compel him to issue an executive order to ensure direct allocations from the federation account to local council. However, 18 months after the judgment, findings show that the process remains largely unimplemented. Local government councils are intensifying calls for full financial autonomy, demanding that funds allocated to them by the federal government should be paid directly into their accounts rather than passing through the state government. What are your thoughts on this issue? I mean, a ruling has been passed 18 months ago, and 18 months after, we are still here. The local government councils are still complaining that they don't get direct funds.
Well, I don't even think the president needs to pass an executive order. I think that once a Supreme Court ruling has been given, that is the highest law in the land. So it's automatic. It doesn't require an executive order. It just requires implementation. But you see, here's the problem, and what the governors are hiding under is the fact that the state governments have been responsible for some of the council expenses. For example, council workers, their salaries come from the state. They are civil servants paid to the state. So any which way you look at it, the state government and the local government, their finances are intertwined, because the state government covers some of their money. The state government has loaned them some money. They pay some of their expenses. So how do you separate those? And the way they look at it is that if they give it to the local government direct, how does the state collect its own share of that in terms of the obligations that the state covers for the local government? So it's not as simple as that. For example, I think it would now require a complete revamping of the civil service to where local government staff become paid by the local government, so that there is no intertwining of responsibilities financially between the two entities, because that's what the state governors are hiding under, is the fact that the money comes to us. When you remove the parts that we are responsible for, the salaries, the pensions, other running costs, loans that we have made to the state government, to the local government roads that we have fixed for them that we should get reimbursed for, those intertwinings, they're not that straightforward and easy to just say you are paying the local government its own share when the state government has taken up over the years a lot of financial responsibilities for the council. And the only way the state government can reimburse itself is when the money comes to the state government. That's why they call it's a joint account that both of them have. So even before the state government takes its own share, the local government sees it and knows what has been taken, sees the justification for what has been taken, and has no choice. If there is any discrepancy, if it doesn't agree with some of the deductions, then they sit down and they hash it out. So these are part of the reasons. It's not that the state governors are that greedy and all they want to do is just sit on the local government funds and just give it up willy-nilly and pay to them whatever they choose to pay. Is that there are some outstanding obligations from the council to the state that must be met, and as usually met at the point of that FAC distribution. So even though the Supreme Court has passed it, there are still things that need to be done before a complete separation can happen. Do you understand? So that is the log jam at the moment. And yes, the president threatened, and what he said he would do if the state governors do not allow the money to go straight to the local governments, what he will do is he will begin deducting it himself from their money and paying it direct to the local government. I think it's a bit more complicated than that. I think it requires a lot more fine tuning than just taking the whole sum, passing it to the council, because there are intertwining obligations between the two.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us today, sir. Time is fast spent.
My pleasure always. Merry Christmas, Nigeria. By the time we talk next, by the time we see each other next, we would have had Christmas already.
Yes.
So I would want compliments of the season, a happy, peaceful, safe, enjoyable Christmas season.
Compliments of the season to you as well, sir. That was Mr.
Thank you
Dayo
very much.
Akintobi, publisher Ikeja DRA Today, Lekki Today, and Ilupeju Today. Do well to follow us on all our social media platforms as seen on your screen. For up-to-date stories, check out our website. It's www.vanguard.com